Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I've always had a strange sensation that life is more mythical than we give it credit for. Yet I'm also a skeptic who looks for a reason behind things, no matter how paranormal they may look. X is filled with creepypasta and strange pictures, and obvious lies, silly debates. I would like to share some of my experiences with you all, not to troll or anything of the sort, but I feel a need to vent to people who don't know me. All my life, as far back as I can remember, my mind has been a warped place. Nights I would not sleep due to what people now call night terrors as a child. Not asleep, but seeing faces of creatures outside my window. Beyond the normal daddy there is a monster. And to the point of sheer screaming terror, bashing on walls till someone came to save me. It's always been like that. I was raised strictly in a Christian family. No video games filled with violence, no disturbing cartoon shows. I went to school, and I was dragged to church. Nothing but the dancing and praising and prophecy and speaking in tongues. Fire and brimstone sermons. This is what I want to think warped my mind. Paranoid of the unseen. The nightmares never stopped. Monsters, hellish places, disgusting creatures. I don't know what I even have faith in as far as religion goes. Seen too many strange things. Watched an exorcism and saw things, feet with no body that beckoned I follow. Shadows with great yellow eyes. I was only 15 and I felt as if I was going mad. As years have passed, I've taken a strange sense of acceptance to what all has happened. Every night I sleep preparing for the worst. Every day I wake up and go to work, running on only a couple hours sleep. I went to work one day, and I swear, I got there, I picked up a drill I used to make holes to place signs in, and pushed it directly into a female co-worker's temple and turned it on. It felt so real, so strange, when suddenly I was in my car pulled to the side of the road. I was so confused, I didn't know if I had actually done it or not. Then one night I went downstairs, I took a knife from the kitchen and a towel and proceeded to end my family as they slept. Or so I thought. When I woke up I was sitting in my room, home, alone, and everyone was fine. I didn't want to do these things. Madness, insomnia, possession, all of these things were thrown around by my family, as they threw me into a mental ward at the hospital for a few months. In another one of these dream states I attempted to terminate myself by dragging a box knife up and down my forearms, and across my neck. This most likely seems a jumbled mess, but that is what my mind feels like. I swear I see things, feel them nearby. My medication makes the dreams more vivid, but my paranoia and depression less of an impact as I am told. Long story short, my own mind confuses, scares, and interests me. I want to not consider myself insane, but I also do not really have faith in the supernatural. I'm stuck someplace in limbo. TLDR, I'm either crazy, infested by demons, or some combination of the two. Talk to me about it.
You were filled with the idea of an unseen, unbeatable terror, and at the same time you didn't pick up the mental tools that allowed you to keep the terror at bay. In your subconscious, a paradox was created with basically an evil that went unchanged. And this paradox of belief spilled over into your waking mind. You have to fill that faith void with something. Doesn't have to be a religion, but you gotta believe in something. Science, Christ, Virgin Mary, football, whatever.
Very interesting. I know how you probably feel about life being more mystical than people give credit while also looking to reason things out sensibly. A wise frame of mind, in my opinion. Would like to hear in detail the circumstances surrounding these unusual hallucinations, like things you've had.
In detail, the first thing I think pushed me down the slope was the night I had to spend in the church with the male half of the youth group. We were having a prayer war and the church could not be empty without people in it praying to protect and help the area. Meaning different groups, young and old, within the church would take shifts to sit and pray for hours on end. So, one of the older boys said he was afraid he was possessed and wanted an exorcism performed on him. We had no elder supervision, a bunch of guys from 13 to 18 or so years old, all rather Bible studied. So, I thought it was a bad idea and said so. My faith was questioned, so I sat off to the side pretending to be praying for his soul, as the others went about reading scriptures and doing what they thought would cast a demon out. Eventually, the guy getting his demons expelled begins to rant, talk in a rather cheesy, foaming at the mouth, snarling tone of voice. Now, I being the only skeptic there, thought he was an ass, playing some kind of sick joke. Then things got strange, well, stranger. My cousin began to say he was seeing things running about outside the church windows, shadows, what he called demons. Others went into it too. Now I was angry deep down. Perhaps they were all messing with me, or wanting so badly to think of themselves as holy warriors they were making up creatures to defeat. Then I really looked. Formless things, staying out of distance from touching the building, but it was like they wanted inside. At us. At me. Perhaps it was just the hysteria, or something of the sort. At the time I was just stunned. Their yellow eyes just stared. I'll never forget it. As time passed, I was sitting trying to ignore what I was seeing, not admit it, and not be a part of the ritual taking place, even as he began to calm down and praise the Lord for his freedom. I looked down at the floor and I saw a pair of disembodied feet. What was strange is they stood there, as if they were attached to a person who was just invisible. The feet were a sort of purple in color. Almost ghostly. No one else saw them. They would run up to me and wait. And then run to the empty back room of the church. Then run back to me. Waiting. As if asking me to follow. I never did, and I dread what I would have seen had I when it felt as if they had given up. The tops of each foot opened into a large pair of those sickening yellow eyes. I know it sounds silly, but this pair of disembodied eye feet will be the scariest thing I can think of in my life.
From my point of view, it seems reasonable to think that the feet maybe weren't entirely a figment of your imagination. Though I have to say, it sounds like you've been hallucinating a lot. Religious events, especially ones involving a lot of people and lasting for a long time, can build up a lot of non-physical energy, which can easily attract the attention of various kinds of astral beings. If there was a lot of belief in, fussing over, fear of demons or other such nasties at a time and place like that, it wouldn't be surprising for one to turn up. I wouldn't expect anyone to physically see anything, normally creepy, evil feelings and fear at most. But could have been that something was there, you sensed it, and your brain interpreted the information as what you saw.
The man of science in me wants me to believe that you're just schizophrenic and your Pentecostal upbringing severely catalyzed this. Unfortunately, I can't just rule this out as schizophrenia. You seem too level-headed to be schizophrenic. To the best of my knowledge, schizos think everything they see here is real and that other people are crazy for not seeing it. Bouts of schizophrenia and acid trips are pretty similar things, from what I've read. As far as how to combat this, assuming that is your aim, I'm not really sure what to suggest. A nice religion might help, but then again it might backfire and fuel your images. If you're looking for a more lucrative solution, try turning your visions and nightmares into fiction prose, or painting, or something of that sort. Bottom line, just don't sit on your ass about it. Something to consider. In an atmosphere or extreme mental turbulence, it's possible dimensional organisms were attracted to the church's location. Please don't misunderstand, I'm not a sage-burning, circle of protection, New Age spells dork. What I'm talking about? Well, I hate to reference a movie on something I take seriously, but From Beyond is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Although you'd swear on your deathbed it was truly supernatural, a deep science is actually at work here. My advice is in lines with someone for these other level-headed folks. Get yourself something mentally stable, a peaceful religion, meditation, will you mind with science? It's my opinion that your torment is a turbulent mental state, which either induces tricks of the mind or attracts organisms from beyond.
Thanks for everyone posting in this thread, reading people actually talking to me like a person, not like most of the doctors acting like I am either plain old crazy and some magic pills will fix it all, or in fact I'm not crazy and therefore I have to be making it all up. I used to draw and paint quite a bit, but the reaction from friends and family was enough to make me forever listed as a black sheep. Lately I don't live in fear for myself, but more of myself. Not afraid of what things could do to me, but what I, in a state of mind either used by something spiritual, or just because I'm crazy, could end up hurting people I have no real malice to. If people honestly think it is interesting, I could speak of some of my more memorable dreams. Okay, I'm not an attention seeker, and I don't want piles of uninteresting text pushing back more current topics. So if I grow annoyed, just a few people say so. While I was in the mental ward of the hospital, everyone shared a room as usual. Well, I was stuck with a bum-looking man who was under the impression he was rich and this place was his mansion. He also had a terrible snoring problem. I mean terrible. While walking by the room while our door was shut, a nurse asked me if I wanted a different room. I said yes, please. I had spent 3 days in triage, the holding area before the upstairs, without a bed or regular meals, in the same damn clothing without a shower. I was absolutely stoked when she said I would have a room to myself. Come to find out, it was the solitary confinement room. Leather straps on the sides of the bed, a bigger, heavier door. A security camera to watch inside. And the bed was chained to the floor. I wasn't being put in there for erratic behavior, so I wasn't being locked in or tied down. I was so very tired, so the creepy atmosphere of the room didn't kick in until after I had slept and awoke. I ended up having a nightmare that night. In it I was chained to a vast ceiling, hanging by my arms in the nude. When I looked down, I could see the bottom of the room, as if it went on into the blackness for miles. But the chains were old and I could feel it, how rusty, sticky, and wet they were. When I finally got my bearings, I realized I was not alone, and people were hung in rows across the room in the same state as me, moaning in fear and pain. Over it all I could hear a strange crunching wet noise, one that would turn my stomach as I finally saw what it was. A maggot the size of a house was slithering along, its bottom half going into the darkness, suggesting it was far longer. Lazily, slowly it would move from person to person, leaving only a set of swinging chains and a pair of forearms in each one's place. With every one he ate, he drew his gaping, disgusting, toothless mouth closer to me. When I looked down and saw it open, it was fresh with bile and blood from other victims. I screamed and woke up just as it lunged up for me. I was in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. For a split moment, the blink of an eye, I swear I saw one of the things I saw outside the church pressed against the glass. Its sickly, bloodshot yellow eyes staring at me. In a breath it was gone.
You know what you need to do. Gar up. Nothing in particular, just watch a few awesome shows involving badass heroics, basically good fairy tales. Gurren Lagann comes to mind. I had a similar problem, although not as severe, and having a strong moral high ground cleared it up.
It's not to say I'm a coward, or I live in constant fear, but these outbreaks can be so vivid, and in some dreams I cannot do anything about it. Some people say once you realize it is a dream you can wake yourself, or control it. Even when I realize this is impossible, I'm the one creating this nightmare. I can manipulate it. I can wake up. It still persists until it is over.
Not being able to control dreams is no big deal. I've never been able to even realize I'm dreaming until I've woken up. However, though I had some encounters with night terrors myself, it's never been anything as concrete as what you've described. Some of your earlier posts lead me to believe you're prone to hallucination. If this is the case, simple things like the slight motion of a shadow, which still can terrify me despite my best efforts, can be magnified into far greater monsters. A lot of what you've described has been extremely similar to what friends of mine have described as the effects of extreme hallucinogens. If something is loose or misplaced in your brain's physical structure, common motions such as simply walking around could be accidentally releasing chemicals that cause these hallucinations, and well as causing short-term memory loss. TL, Doctor, physical deformities in your brain can cause temporary chemical imbalances significant enough to affect perception, yet not long-lasting enough to be detected by medical science. I recommend getting a CAT scan or undergoing several observed sleep sessions so you can notify the doctors as soon as you have one of these dreams, and they can check your blood.
I may have to do that, thank you. It would be more than a load off of my shoulders if I found out it was just something of that sort.
Just to warn you, even if that is the case, you'll still have to deal with this for the rest of your life. As I said earlier, even knowing the cause of something doesn't do much to quell the fear, because fear is an irrational emotion. Even knowing the odds of a plane going down and killing everyone aboard, many people are still terrified of boarding such a plane. Despite knowing with absolute certainty that I am the only living macroorganism in my room, I still feel terror at the beam of light from a street lamp split by my desk lamp into two glowing spots on my wall. Human beings have fear hardwired into them, and there's nothing we fear more than the unknown. No matter how hard we try to conquer that fear, it's there, and it always will be. You have a hard life ahead of you. OP, good luck.
It was winter of 2006 and I had just moved to San Francisco, California from the Pacific Northwest to attend college. It was my first time living away from my family, so I shared a one-bedroom apartment with my high school best friend. We were living off campus in an apartment building in Nob Hill. My first semester of college was chaotic and stressful as expected, but nothing could have explained the mystery of our apartment. It started with the boombox mysteriously turning itself on and off. I thought I had accidentally left it on overnight when it would start playing on the radio, but it kept happening, even when we weren't home. Things progressively got weirder as our kitchen cabinet doors would open and close themselves when no one was in the room. As more weeks passed, the bathroom door and bedroom doors would open and close on their own in the middle of the night, sometimes slamming. Eventually, we would experience all these happenings at night, which increased our fear of our apartment. One night after an impossibly long day at school and work, I made dinner, finished some homework, and went to sleep. I randomly woke up in the middle of the night to find myself exactly in the same position in my bed, with everything in my room the same as before falling asleep. But I'm completely stiff. I can't move. I try to speak, but I don't have a voice, and my mouth won't open. My focus is pulled to this dense, black cloud looming in the corner of my ceiling, and I can't look away, as much as I want to. A figure starts to emerge out of this plume, and I see an old woman with straggly, long black hair. She's very pale, meek, with sunken features. Her skin is gray and textured like a snake, and her eyes are black and hollow. I can only see the top half of her body as the rest of her body is submerged in this black fog. She's summoning me. She doesn't say anything to me, but I feel her presence, and I feel her wanting to take me off this plane. I'm scared and shaking, terrified I might die. This woman is trying to take my soul. I feel her pulling on my chest, moving me, lifting me off my bed about a foot. I still can't move, but she continues to pull me higher and higher toward her. I'm trying to fight back. I'm trying to scream and yell, but I can't, still have no voice, and am still paralyzed. I realize I must communicate with her the same way she did with me, telepathically, and I ask her to let me go. I plead that it's not my time to go yet. I have so much more to live for, that she's got the wrong person, and after a few minutes of crying and begging, she releases me back down to my bed. I fall hard about 6 feet onto my bed and wake up. My eyes open and everything is still exactly as it was, but I still can't speak or move. I convince myself that I'm still in my dream, that if I close and open my eyes again, I'll wake up. I try it again, and this time I can move. I found my voice, but I still can't tell if this was a dream or reality. Everything looks exactly as it had moments before, but now I'm able to move around. Completely freaked out, I ran to my roommate's bed upset and trying to make sense of what happened, and asked to sleep with her. She obliges. She consoles me and calms me down after about an hour, then directs me to count sheep with her until eventually I fall back asleep and stay asleep until morning. After my confrontation with this unexplained figure, our odd occurrences stopped. The doors no longer opened and closed themselves, and our radio stayed in its on-off position, and we never had another issue again.
My grandparents have a cabin in a town in Pennsylvania, south of Scranton. Every summer we usually go up for a few weeks as a family event, ever since I was little. A few years ago we decided to go up in the winter because my family wanted to go skiing at some point. After we got there, the weird things started happening really quickly, and seemingly out of nowhere. The house was built in the 1920s, an old brick and wood home. The doors are these giant, almost church-looking doors, and the style of the home is very medieval, definitely adding to the creepy vibes of the home. The first night was seemingly calm through the house, but whenever I went there I always felt there was something there, or something lurking through the halls. The first night I got up to go to the bathroom at around 3:10 a.m., which is also interesting because I never get up to go to the bathroom back at home. Most nights I sleep right through without waking up. There were 8 of us in the house, my 2 parents, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, and my 2 male cousins. I went to one of the 3 main bathrooms, 4 in the house if you count the master. So when I heard someone in there I thought that was interesting, because I was one of the few people who doesn't share the bathroom. But I stood outside waiting to make sure I did not intrude on anything going on in there, as my one cousin has irritable bowel syndrome and I didn't want to bother him. What was extremely weird is the fact that whatever was in there didn't sound human in its movements. It seemed to drag its feet around, which made me nervous that he may be sick. I called out his name a few times. Drew, are you okay in there? It's been a long time and I want to go to bed, or something along those lines. A few seconds later he comes out of his bedroom and tells me why I'm making so much noise and he's trying to sleep, and slams his door behind him. Before I could freak out he had already shut the door and I was too scared to even yell back to him. I never realized before that the door wasn't even locked in the first place, which made me feel even more uneasy. Between the banter I never realized the sound stopped, and it seemed like nobody was even in the bathroom anymore. I still even tell myself this was just my imagination going wild, but I'm not known for sleepwalking or having any type of sleep disorder. I decided to just open the door, brushing it off as my too vivid imagination. When I opened the door it really looked like nothing strange had happened in there. But when I was washing my hands I realized the window was open, and I froze thinking someone had broken into the house. But this was on the 2nd story, with nothing to climb up on, making it almost impossible to climb up there. The next day nothing happened in the daytime, making it seem more to me that it was just a figment of my imagination than reality. But that night I had to let my dog out. She is elderly and never really barks much. Nor does she run fast, so this definitely is a case for concern, I thought. When I let her out, she bolted to the edge of the woods and vanished inside them. I tried to follow her barking, but honestly I was too scared to go into the woods past the tree line. When I finally got her to walk back, her back legs seemed off, almost like a person pretending to be a dog walking on the ground. Her eyes were also off, they looked human-like, not her usual dark almond eyes. I freaked out and ran back inside without her. When I got inside she was sitting panting by the door, so she must have ran back in when I was yelling into the woods to try to find her. At this point I didn't even want to leave that house, for fear of what was lurking in the woods. The last night we stayed there was the most interesting and confusing turn of events that had happened. We all had skied all day, so we went to bed quite early, around 9 or 10. I never fall asleep early, as I am usually a night owl. But I woke up around 12 a.m. to the sounds of my cousin Drew yelling outside. I woke up in a fog and tried to quickly rush to the door and open it. I didn't even take into consideration that the door was still locked from the inside. When I got outside, his voice seemed to be coming from multiple directions and echoing through the valley. I saw him by the cars yelling, and when I started to go outside and call out his name, he looked at me quickly. His eyes got huge and he ran into the woods, with a beckoning gesture for me to follow. I decided that was definitely a bad idea, so I woke up his parents and he ended up being asleep in his room the whole time. Not until years later did I even find out about skinwalkers from one of my Native American friends I met in college. I still have no idea what was out there that weekend, and I haven't been back since.
I've seen something that might have been a demon. I can't be sure. Anyways, me and a group of friends were wandering around the outside of a cemetery one night, as there's a nature walk that goes around it and down to the town gardens. We stopped at a place that's usually where the local pagans do their stuff. It's a well-known sacred ground. We were chatting and lighting a few candles we brought with us. It's nice and quiet there, and sometimes you can meet some real weird but interesting people who go there. So I was sitting on the grass in the middle of the circle, when behind this tree I saw a man. He was wearing a dark blood red hood and robe, and he was kinda half standing behind this tree, so I could only see half his face in the candle lights. Under his hood he was wearing some kind of mask that looked like a human skull, and I could see his eyes behind the bony ridges. I will never forget those eyes, like irises of fire and light. The skull mask was strange because it had inhumanly long fangs that went down over his lips. I think he had gray skin, gray or black, but it was his eyes I noticed. I drew a picture of him once, though I lost it a long time ago. He spoke to me inside my head and I just stared at him. I made some kind of response and then he left. I can't remember what he said to me or what my response was. I never felt threatened or scared. Afterward I actually felt kind of empowered. My friends said I kinda spaced out and they didn't see anything behind the tree. We weren't on any drugs or anything and we hadn't been drinking. It was a strange experience.
In June 2011, I was 17 years old and serving on a mission trip in the mountains of Haiti, working to feed the locals and host a Bible school for them as well. This was the second trip that my church had planned, but this was the first time in the new location. It was decided by the church elders that taking a group of high school students to the first one was not such a good idea, as a local voodoo shaman had cursed a group of missionaries that were present after our church's first group had left a year or so prior. It wasn't the curse that kept our church away, it was the way the villagers had reacted to the curse that was the deciding factor. Namely, beheading the missionaries who were brave enough to stay. Our group would be teaching the residents of La Victory about God, Jesus, and Christianity for roughly 2 weeks as we braved the hot and humid mountains of central Haiti and the football-sized cockroaches, cane spiders, and bot flies. Lovely trip actually. I'd go back any time that isn't midsummer. Fast forward through the evangelism about a week and we were really starting to make an impact in the community. Our Bible school had grown from 30 to well over 600 kids in attendance, and almost 80 of them would accept Christ before the end of the trip. This is also the time that gut-checked everyone on the trip and really made all of us sure of our faith. We had been housed in an upper-class Haitian compound that afforded us many luxuries we had not been expecting. There were cots that were very comfortable, 3 meals a day, more than enough clean drinking water. We showered in the nightly rain showers. They were more powerful than any showerhead I've come across yet, and a crude cement perimeter wall that stood about 10 feet high and was rimmed with broken glass. On roughly night 7 of the stay, we had all turned off the flashlights, no reliable power there, and tucked into bed around 10 p.m. Everything was normal. The island breeze keeps us cool in the 80 degrees tropical night, and frogs and insects make their usual noises. That was, until 1 a.m. The breeze had stopped suddenly and showed no sign of coming back. I had woken up in a sweat and was having a very hard time getting comfortable with the muggy air, and eventually decided just to grab my iPod and listen to music until I fell asleep, which unknown to me at the time would not be coming back that night. I had been used to turning the volume up just enough to drown out the sounds of the monstrous bugs, but noticed that there was no reason to do that as there was not one sound outside. It had all stopped with the breeze. I thought almost nothing of it at the time and continued listening to a calm recording of meditation music that should be relaxing me, but no matter how hard I tried to focus on the music, my breathing, anything, I just continued getting tense and agitated. There shouldn't be lyrics to a meditation track. Frustrated, I turned the iPod off and laid back in a huff. It was then that I noticed the lyrics hadn't stopped, and that they weren't in English, and that they were chanting. Somewhere across the sleepy little town there was a gathering of 50 or more people from the sound of it, chanting slowly in the dark. There were absolutely no light sources in the direction the sounds were coming from. And the chant continued, growing louder and creepier as it continued at its slow pace for nearly 30 minutes. I turned the iPod back on and switched to rock music, with the volume on max to try and drown the noise out, but it continued and sounded as though it was right next to me even through the headphones. Finally the chanting stopped. I felt ice cold as I lay there in the tropical night, with an ever-growing sense of dread, and a natural instinct that told me this was what evil felt like. Until this point in my life I had never felt the presence of evil. The feeling continued to grow until it was replaced by panic. From the sound of the chanting now came screams. Bone-chilling, bloody murder, female screams. The chanting started back up and now the sound of dogs barking. Though still not in English, and not in any language at all, the screams felt as though they were a desperate plea for help. The sky was black with clouds, and it was the kind of night where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But I was glad for the darkness, because I did not want to be able to see what could be around. The chanting, screaming, and dogs all came to a sudden stop and the entire island was silent for what felt like an eternity. The only sound that could be heard was a single, low, dog's howl. The howl seemed to come from one of the dogs that had been barking, but was quickly picked up and echoed across the entire region. Once the howl stopped, there was not a sound until dawn. And still no breeze. I don't know who or what caused those sounds, and have no desire to. It put our hosts on edge for the entire day and they did not stay with us at the compound the next night. This could have been unrelated, but at the time it put everyone's thoughts on the shaman from the last village and how the other group had been received afterwards.
Circleville is a small city in Ohio that has a population of over 13,000. Its biggest event is the annual Circleville Pumpkin Show. It is also the home of a mysterious letter writer known as the Circleville Letter Writer. Starting in 1976, residents of Circleville began receiving mysterious, vindictive letters. Thousands of letters, written in block letters, were sent to city officials and even normal citizens. One recipient of the letters was school bus driver Mary Gillespie. She received letters accusing her of having an extramarital affair with a school official. On August 19, 1977, Mary's husband Ron Gillespie received a phone call seeming to indicate the identity of the writer. He left his house with his gun to confront the writer. He was found dead a short distance from his house. His car was driven off the road and his gun had been fired once. He died as a result of the crash and it is unknown why he fired the gun. It is unclear if it was an accident or murder. Later, while driving her bus, Mary saw signs along her route harassing her. She went to take one down and discovered a booby trap meant to fire a gun at her. The gun belonged to her former brother-in-law Paul Freshour. Freshour was convicted of attempted murder and was thought to be the Circleville writer. However, While incarcerated, the letters continued despite him being in solitary confinement without access to letter writing material and his mail being monitored. He was denied parole because of the letters and received one himself after his parole was denied.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.